A 16-year-old boy is kidnapped by pirates, sold into slavery, escapes years later, and then voluntarily goes back to the very people who enslaved him. Not for revenge, but for their salvation. That boy becomes St. Patrick. Because this is not the green beer, shamrocks, and rainbows version of St. Patrick. This is the fire in his veins, I'm going back to the people who enslaved me version. And trust me, it's way better. This story has pirates, visions, druids, kings, catechizing with plants, and enough spiritual depth to feed your restless heart for weeks. Happy St. Patrick's Day and welcome back to the Rebel Saints podcast. I'm Nicole and I am so glad you're here. Let me ask you something. Do you ever feel like your soul has a permanent case of wanderlust? Like you just want to travel and explore, talk to people and see all of the things? Yeah, me too. St. Patrick turned that restless longing into a missionary calling and a pagan island into the Isle of Saints. First things first, St. Patrick was not Irish. Not by birth anyway. Yeah, I know. I'll give you a moment if you need to let that sink in. He was born in what we now call Great Britain, sometime in the late 4th century, around 385 to 390 AD. In his own writings, especially his spiritual autobiography called The Confessio, Patrick described his hometown as Banaventa Tabernae. Where that is exactly is lost to history. Proposed locations include northwest England, around modern Cumbria, parts of Wales, the southwest of England near Dorset or Devon, and even Scotland, specifically Old Kilpatrick near Dumbarton. Most modern historians settle on a simple answer: Roman Britain. One thing we do know for certain, Patrick did not start life in Ireland. So let's rewind the clock. In the late 300s, the Roman Empire is starting to crack, and a teenage boy named Maewyn Succat is living a pretty comfortable life. Yes, that was Patrick's original name. Patrick came later. His father Calpurnius was a deacon. His grandfather Potitus was a priest, and the family owned land. His father even served as a decurion, basically a local Roman civic official. So Patrick grew up with social status, stability, and solid Christian roots. Wait, priests could have kids? Rebel Saints, your brain is not glitching. I think we should take a quick theology detour, because some of you may still be caught up on the part where I said Patrick's grandfather was a priest. In the earliest centuries of Christianity, many priests were married. The faith spread first through ordinary households, so it was natural that some husbands and fathers were later ordained to serve their communities. Over time, the church in the West began to recognize the spiritual power of priests giving their lives completely to God in celibacy. That discipline slowly developed across the centuries. But in Patrick's time, the late 4th century, mandatory celibacy had not yet been universally established. So it wouldn't have been unusual at all to find priests who had once been married and were living within family life. Meanwhile, the Christian East still maintains the ancient practice of ordaining married men, even today. So yes, Patrick really did grow up in a family where his grandfather was a priest and his father a deacon. And life for young Maewyn Succat was comfortable. He had a stable home, a respected family, a future that probably looked pretty predictable. But at 16 years old, everything changed, because one night, Irish raiders landed on the coast of Britain. Like actual pirates. They swoop in along the coast, grab him out of his world at 16 years old, haul him across the Irish Sea, and sell him into slavery. He endured that for 6 long years. 6 freezing, lonely, back-breaking years herding sheep on a remote hillside somewhere in Ireland, possibly County Mayo, possibly Antrim. Imagine it, an endless gray sky pressing down, wind cutting through thin clothes, sheep bleating like they are mocking him. 6 years of the same damp hillside, the same cold, the same hunger. No letters home, no rescue on the horizon, just him, the sheep, and the slow grind of isolation that could break almost anyone. Most 16-year-olds would have given up, let bitterness take root, but Patrick did not. Something inside of him opened up, and he turned to prayer. And we know from his own writings that these were desperate prayers, constant prayers. He says he prayed hundreds of times a day. He would rise before dawn. He would pray in the cold rain. He prayed through exhaustion and fear. And of this time, Patrick said, "The love of God and the fear of him grew stronger and stronger in me." Right there, in the middle of slavery, he discovered freedom. Then one night, in a dream, he's told, "Your ship is ready," so Patrick bolts. 200 miles on foot through unfamiliar terrain, he reaches the coast and finds a ship preparing to sail. The captain refused him at first. Patrick prayed. Then the captain changed his mind and lets him aboard his ship. They sailed, but the journey, it was difficult. They nearly starved. Eventually, they landed somewhere near Gaul, which is modern-day France today. From there, Patrick begins his long journey home. Eventually, he makes it back to Britain and his family, back to safety, to comfort, to what could have been a decent and comfortable life. His story could have ended there. But God was not finished with Patrick yet. Years pass. Patrick studies. He becomes a priest, later a bishop. And then one night he has another dream. In it he hears voices from Ireland calling out to him, "Holy youth, we beg you, come and walk among us again." Most people would have said, "Yeah, no, hard pass. Those are the same people who kidnapped me and stole 6 years of my life." Patrick, he hears the call differently though. He sees a mission. In 432 AD, he sailed back to Ireland, back to the land where he had once been a slave. He brings with him no army, no political power, just the gospel. And the land he arrived in hadn't changed much. It was still steeped in ancient pagan ways. Druids held enormous influence, not only spiritually, but politically too. They were advisors to kings, they would interpret omens, and preside over rituals meant to appease gods tied to nature, fertility, and war. Sacred groves of ancient oak trees serve as their temples. These are the places where people believe the veil between worlds is thin. Laws of hospitality, kingship, and the turning of the seasons are enforced through a mix of awe, reverence, and sometimes fear. And it was into this world Patrick entered. He carried with him only a simple walking stick, his bishop's crozier, the symbol of a shepherd who has come to tend his flock, and the gospel of Christ, crucified and risen, burning in his heart. It wasn't too long before he had his first big clash. According to later traditions, especially a 7th century account written by Mir Hu, the moment happens around the year 433. At the time, the High King of Ireland was Leary. He ruled from the hill of Tara, the ceremony heart of royal power. Every spring, the druids declare that no fire may be lit anywhere in the land until the king's own sacred Beltane fire is kindled at Tara at dawn. That flame marked the renewal of the kingdom and the authority of the king. No fire before Tara's fire. That was the law. But Patrick chooses that very night to light one anyway. You see, it's the Easter Vigil, the night Christians celebrate the resurrection. Patrick climbs the nearby hill of Slane, about 10 miles from Tara, and lights the Paschal fire. That symbolizes the light of Christ breaking through the darkness. That flame shoots into the night sky, and from Tara, it can be seen for miles. The king is furious, of course. From his perspective, this is not just a religious act. He would have considered it a direct challenge to his authority and the power of his gods. So he sends men to confront Patrick. But Patrick, he doesn't run, he doesn't hide. Instead, he walks straight toward Tara with his companions. What follows, at least in traditional stories, is a dramatic spiritual showdown. The druids attempt their magic. Patrick responds with prayer and the power of the gospel. Storms scatter their efforts. Miracles are said to have occurred. In some versions of the story, even the king's daughters are moved by what they witness and convert on the spot. Whether every detail happened exactly that way, the message preserved by the early Irish Christians is clear. This was not simply an argument about ideas. It was a clash of worlds, light against shadow. The true God confronting the powers that had shaped Ireland for centuries. Then there is this famous shamrock moment. This one is almost certainly a legend. Patrick's own writings never mention it. The earliest version of the story does not appear until centuries later, around the 1600s. But the legend stuck around for a reason. The story says Patrick picked up a small 3-leaf clover and used it to explain the Trinity. One plant, 3 distinct leaves, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 3 persons, yet one God. You can almost picture the scene, right? Patrick kneeling in the grass beside the skeptical chieftain, plucking a little shamrock from the ground and holding it up. See this? 3 leaves, 1 stem, 1 life flowing through them all. For a people used to many competing gods, that image may have helped something click in an abstract way. Theology never could. And then there are the snakes. The legend says Patrick drove every serpent out of Ireland. Except Ireland has not had native snakes since the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 years ago. The island's geography simply prevented them from ever returning. So the story almost certainly works as a symbol. In Christian imagery, snakes often represent evil or deception. Think of the serpent in Genesis. In the imagination of the early Irish church, Patrick driving out the snakes became a poetic way of describing him driving out the old pagan ways. The gospel was pushing out the old fears, the rituals of power. Patrick did not need a magical flute like some folklore hero. The cross was enough. And slowly the island began to change. From there, the mission spreads. Patrick baptized thousands. Entire clans gather at rivers and wells to enter the Christian faith. Churches begin appearing across the countryside. Monasteries are planted that become centers of prayer, learning, and community life. And those monasteries end up doing something amazing. While much of post-Roman Europe struggled after invasions and collapsing institutions, Irish monks were copying manuscripts, scripture, theology, and even the classical works of writers like Plato and Virgil. They worked by candlelight in stone monasteries scattered across Ireland's green hills. By the 6th through 9th century, Irish missionaries began traveling outward again to Scotland, England, and mainland Europe. Figures like Columbanus carry the faith and learning of Ireland back into a fractured world. That is how Ireland eventually earned the nickname the Isle of Saints and Scholars. When Patrick wrote about his life in his own words, in his manuscript Confessio, he didn't boast about these victories. He actually talked about forgiveness. And although Patrick had been kidnapped at 16, torn from his home, sold into slavery, and forced to work as a shepherd in a foreign land, he wrote about those people with astonishing mercy. And he returned to Ireland not to settle score, but because he believed their souls were worth saving. He was even willing to give up his freedom again for the sake of others. And that is just such a beautiful representation of Christ alive in a person. When you turn enemies into brothers and you turn a slave into an apostle. If a kidnapped teenager could become the man who helped transform an entire island, imagine what that kind of grace could do in us. Patrick left us a prayer. It's called the Breastplate or the Lorica of St. Patrick. For centuries, monks chanted it as a kind of spiritual armor. And we can pray it too. Here's a bit of it. Christ within me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ within me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left. This is spiritual armor for restless hearts, if there ever was one. This prayer is beautiful for moments when the world feels like it's raiding your peace again, when anxiety creeps in, when the life feels loud and chaotic, or when it's wonderful and beautiful and your heart feels at peace. Patrick wore this prayer like armor every day, when he was struggling and when he wasn't, and we can too. Now, let's talk about March 17th, Patrick's feast day. Originally in Ireland, it was a holy day, a day of mass and prayer. Churches were packed, people fasted during Lent, and then broke the fast that evening to celebrate. No parades, no green rivers, definitely no green beer. That part came later. In the 1700s, Irish immigrants in the United States started celebrating their heritage publicly. Homesick Irish soldiers in New York held the first St. Patrick's Day parade in 1762. Boston followed soon after. Green became the color of the day. Corned beef showed up on dinner tables because it was affordable for immigrant families. Ironically, Ireland itself did not embrace the parade tradition until much later. The first official St. Patrick's Day parade in Dublin didn't happen until 1931. Today, the celebration has gone global. The holiday was never meant to be about green beer or kiss me, I'm Irish. It was meant to say, Thank you, Patrick, for bringing us Christ. So, what does St. Patrick mean for us Catholics today, Irish or not? He's living proof of what the Catechism of the Catholic Church calls the missionary nature of the Church. You can find that in paragraph 849. Every baptized Christian is sent. Patrick did not wait for a comfortable invitation. He went straight back to the place where he had once been enslaved. And if you think about last Sunday's Gospel from John chapter 9, where Jesus said that suffering sometimes unfolds so that the works of God might be made visible, Patrick's story feels like that's exactly why he had to suffer. God took the worst moment of his life, his kidnapping, his slavery, and turned it into a mission that changed an entire nation. Patrick shows us that suffering can become mission. Chains can become pulpits. Your worst day can become the starting point for someone else's salvation. And he reminds us that the Trinity is not some abstract theological puzzle. It is the family of God you belong to, even when life makes you feel lost, abandoned, or carried somewhere you never expected to go. Your challenge this week is to try something Patrick style. Wear green if you want, but I encourage you to also pray the Breastplate of St. Patrick. If you head over to my Substack, the link will be in my show notes, I've made a free download for you. It's a lock screen prayer you can save on your phone and share with someone who might need it. And if you can find the courage in that beautiful, restless heart of yours, try to forgive one person who hurt you. Or be brave enough to tell one person about the God who turns slaves into saints. Because Patrick is still converting restless hearts like ours. I'm Nicole, and this is Rebel Saints, a Catholic podcast for restless hearts called to be saints. Restless hearts, you are welcome here. I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day. God bless. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Music for this podcast is used under Upbeat's licensed terms for creators. Music is human-made, rights cleared for podcast and content creation. This podcast was written and produced by me, Nicole Olea. Share your reflection in the comments or tag at Rebel Saints Pod on social. Subscribe for more unfiltered Catholic fire, join our Facebook community, or find us on Patreon by searching Rebel Saints Podcast. Restless hearts, you are welcome here.